Hello, and welcome back to King Note Gaming. It is I, King Note, and today we are on my island of Lacrimosa once again to build the school. So this is a big chunk of the island, and on the opposite side is going to be the hospital build, which, while I'm recording this, I'm almost done with it. I just need this one stupid DIY that I've been searching for, but that doesn't matter for this video. Here you can see I put down some custom designs in the area to kind of figure out where I want the entrance of the school to be versus the inside of the school. And I used, as usual on this island, just so many medieval building sides and castle items in the distressed version. I think that's what they're called. Damaged. They're called damaged. And I'm just kind of, at this point, figuring out where I want everything to go, because later on I'm going to take all that down and make a custom design, which is what's happening here. So I'm making tiles specifically for the school build. I'm adding it, basically making similar to the other stuff I've done before, but I wanted to make the corners join up to make larger squares. And as usual, I start by adding in the cracks, and then I put different shades of gray along the cracks to make it look more natural looking, I guess. And I'm also including more transparent tiles on the other one, transparent pixels on the other ones, so you can see the dirt path underneath them to make it look like, obviously, it's breaking down since this is an abandoned island. And I like that look a lot. I'll also go back in a little bit and add some more shading to the custom designs, like right now. And I essentially just outlined all of the holes and gave them a little bit more depth, so they look like they're, separate pieces of the tile. And I usually make a few different variations just so I can kind of break up the tile a bit and have some more dirt showing through in different spaces to make it look more uneven and interesting. And I also used a lot of ruined columns as well, just to get those corners looking nicer, because I will say the one thing I don't like about the castle gates is that they're 3 tiles instead of 2, which I get why, but it kind of makes it a little bit harder to make even areas, which is why I put those castle walls behind here, and then I basically filled in the gaps with a couple more decorated pillars just to make it feel like an entrance, because this is basically the entrance of the school. And then here I'm putting back the fountains and everything. And I include a bunch of fencing as well, just to kind of break up the area. I love the hedge fencing a lot, especially since it changes with the seasons. So this island isn't going to be set in spring. This island's going to be set on the first snow of the year in November. So the hedges will look a little bit more dead at that point of the year. And here I'm adding in some variation of the brick pathing so I can put some weeds and flowers around. And that's why I made the brick pathing like I did, so I can have some gaps and include weeds and flowers and stuff growing out of the bricks. And at this point I decided to put in kind of like a mini flower bed over here, just so I can have some more flowers on the island. And here I am putting castle walls in, and then I'm going on the second level of the build, because this build is 2 levels. This is where Ophelia's house is, and next to Ophelia, Bella's house, and I kind of made her home into a classroom later, which I will show later on in the video, because I do decorate Bella's house in this video, as well as Ophelia's house, because her house is the school, essentially. One of the school buildings. And I also changed the outside of both houses as well as we're going on here. But yeah, it's a lot of just literally putting in walls where I want them to be is most of this build. The majority of it, the most time I spent, was just putting down all of those tiles and the dirt path, because that took forever, I'll tell you that much. And this is a pretty big build. There's a lot of area to it, but genuinely I love having super huge builds. So, I'm not complaining at all. And as we go here, I'm putting where I want the entrances and exits to be, because I want to divide up this space with castle walls and other walls in order to make them into classrooms as well. So here I'm blocking off this little area here up on the top level to be the bathroom. And as you can see, I had a lot of items ready for this build because it took so many items. I think I went down to under 1,000 items in my storage after this, which is pretty crazy because I am a disgusting hoarder in this game. But yeah, when you build like a city core island, you kind of underestimate how many items you're going to need. This isn't my first city core island. And even then, I'm like, oh, good lord. I didn't realize I was going to need that many walls. I also used a lot of bookshelves, which anytime the book is in Nook's Cranny or at Red's shop, I buy so many of them because I know I'm going to need like 1,000,000 bookshelves. Not just for actual bookshelves, but for walls as well. And here I am adding in the library, which, yeah, library needs books. And I included like little study areas since it's essentially just like a private school, but broken down and abandoned, of course, because that's Lacrimosa. And I'm putting in a bunch of different walls to make it feel more like a building proper, even though there's no ceiling. But I like walkable buildings, like walkable fake buildings. That's my favorite thing to build in this game. And here I'm finally doing like actual decorating instead of just putting up the foundations. Putting in a couple of little low tables here, the cool low tables for like study tables for the students who used to live here. And of course, essay sets, a laptop for the librarian who's would be watching these kids, and that kind of thing. I really like the recycled news bundle as well. There's a lot of really good like little items here. And I also put in a bunch of glowing moss, as well as glowing moss in areas where it's hard to see the castle gates, because it's vertical instead of horizontal. So I put like a couple of there so you can tell there's an entrance there, since I think I'm kind of split on what time of day I want the dream address to be. I'm thinking either early morning or night, but I'm not quite sure yet. But either way, you should be able to see the glowing moss and find your way through things a little bit easier. And then I got a couple of magazine racks in the back there. I think the bathroom turned out pretty nice too. I end up putting a skeleton here, and that's one of those things, like if you visit the stream address when it comes out, I'll try and keep a tally of how many of them there are, and you can try and find all of them. And I finally was able to use these like left and right chalkboard sides for the classroom build, and I really like how they look, especially like that dark wood. I think it turned out super nice. And I'm going to let the music go just for a little bit here, and I'll check back in once I get to the interior builds. And now it's time for me to redesign Bella's house. And Bella, in her HHP, in HHP, she asks for a recording studio. So I wanted to make her a music teacher for Lacrimosa. And I made her house kind of blend in with Ophelia's house as well. Made it more dark, obviously, to match everything else. And here I am getting rid of everything in her house. And I changed the wallpaper to the perforated board wall and the dark wood floor. And yeah, I figured since she likes music, and she's super cute, I love Bella. She's a great character. But anyway, we're going to make her house into the music classroom for the school. I will say the one thing about redesigning your villagers' houses, obviously you have all of the stuff that you unlock from HHP, but sometimes it's like, oh god, there's so much, I can't find anything. But I wanted to make it just a simple little classroom setup with a couple of lecture hall benches and a couple of seats and then some musical instruments and stuff because it's a music classroom. And I think it turned out pretty good. I'm kind of mad that there's not enough like matching wood between the items, but you know, that's just the problem with any kind of game with furniture in it. You know. But here I'm adding in like some books and some other things like homework sets for the students. I'm eventually going to go back and do a final video decorating all of the villagers' houses, because there is one thing that I need to add onto all of them, and that's the hanging vine garland, which for some awful reason I still haven't gotten that DIY yet. Oh, also I put Lacrimosa's flag up there in that framed picture, which is just a simple treble and bass clef heart. And if you don't know where the word Lacrimosa comes from, it's from the Requiem Mass, which is a funeral text from the Catholic Church that was used in a lot of classical music. Yeah, see, I have the vine garlands here. So I don't think I have to redo her house, actually. I also put in the thumb can piano. And now I am making Ophelia's house. To go back to what I was talking about earlier, since the beginning stages of making this house aren't very interesting, I just have a bunch of lockers. It's like a hallway, kind of, for the entrance. But Lacrimosa is either Greek, I think it's Greek or Latin, I can't remember which, because the Requiem Mass uses both Greek and Latin in it. But Lacrimosa is just like lamenting, sad. It's a funeral text. So the most famous piece titled Lacrimosa is from Mozart's Requiem, which is kind of where I got the inspiration for this island. Just, I think somebody put up a version of Lacrimosa where they just added a bunch of reverb to make it sound kind of empty, and it just gave me the idea for this island. So of course I had to name it Lacrimosa. But if you ever want to listen to it, it is a gorgeous piece of music. It is a choral work. I actually was in choirs growing up, and I was in like more state choirs and that kind of thing. And in a select state choir that I got into, we sung the Mozart Requiem, and it was super fun. Very, very beautiful piece. Highly recommended if you've never heard it. And I also looks like I made another music classroom, which is totally fine, because, you know, there's choir room versus theory room versus band room, whatever. And then I changed this room into another little classroom. I essentially made all of the main rooms into classrooms. On the ground floor, they're all different classrooms. I think I made this one into like a biology kind of classroom. I really like the skeleton and the anatomical model a lot. They're super cool items, and they're very creepy. You know, this is a horror-themed island, so I gotta have some of that in there. And then the next room I made into, I believe this is the bathroom. right? Yeah, I made this into, like, the bathroom. Used the curtain partitions to make stalls, essentially, and I put another skeleton in there, because there's gotta be another skeleton somewhere. I probably am going to include more dollies in builds, too, just because that's a homage to Ica Village, the OG horror Animal Crossing island. Maybe not the first one, but the most famous, at least. And then the basement I made into kind of a creepy little ritual room, because it's fun, and why not? And I like, on a horror island, you gotta do something weird with the basement. Also, those CPR dummies are hilarious and perfect for this kind of thing. I think at this point I was kind of like running out of good indoor items because I got so many just for big builds, but I wanted to include more of the glowing moss stuff, which on this island represents radiation, because the island, unfortunately, had a nuclear meltdown, and that is why it is abandoned. And then at this point, I figure out that I want the lights on, and I put music everywhere. That's all I'm doing in this last little section, really. And now I'm adding a couple more things. I added in some like more lighting and stuff. And then the top room, as the attic, the tradition I have, if I turn my character's house into a specific building, I make the attic into like a little apartment for them, so they have somewhere to stay. And I love making the attics into an apartment, make it into something livable and interesting, and separate it with different things. For example, I'm going to be using a castle gate to make the little bathroom area separate, but you can still walk into it that way. And we're all done with the build. Enjoy the glamour shots, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye!